All right. Welcome, everybody. Kicking off our December BPAC meeting, we can start with a quick round of introductions. Maybe we'll lead with the folks who are on Zoom since they often get left to the end. Stephen and Ethan, welcome.
Thanks.
That name, neighborhood, what brings you here?
I'm Stephen Bach. I live in the Little High neighborhood, and I'm interested in all the bicycle and pedestrian issues that come before the committee. Ethan?
Ethan Tate in the Martha Jefferson neighborhood, close to East High Street. Yeah, same. Care about mobility and equity in mobility and getting kids safely to school and all that stuff.
Awesome. We'll take it around the table. If you want to lead us out.
I'm Deb. I'm from the Cherry Avenue, Rock Creek area of Collinsville, and just really interested in making moving around town without calling.
I'm Guinevere Higgins. I'm the BPAC Vice Chair. I live in Belmont. All the things that everyone has said so far.
Hi, I'm Mike, live in Belmont, just interested in making bicycle lane and walking around town easier.
I'm Peter. I also live in Belmont. Josh Cron, Locust Grove.
I'm Ben Chambers. I'm the city's transportation planning manager. This is not an alcoholic beverage. And I live downtown and I'm a big walker and slowly converting into being an insane biker. Yeah, so.
I'm William. I'm a first year student at UVA. I'm here for a class, but I'm excited to learn about the issues of bicycling and pedestrian issues.
I'm Sadie. I live on Ridge Street. I am an e-biker and Japanese breed.
James Van Rankin, also live on Ridge Street and keen to make it safer for people outside of cars.
Tommy Safranek, city bikes and pedestrian coordinator, and I live in Martha Jefferson neighborhood.
Thank you. Next up, a couple of quick formal matters, just to approve the agenda, draft agenda and the meeting notes, meeting minutes from last month. Feel free to make comments if you have them. Otherwise, I'll assume they are approved. Great. Public comment next. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak before the committee to bring things to our attention. Does anyone have anything for public comment? Excellent. Moving on to questions for staff. Staff have provided written updates for us. They're still on printed copy if anyone wants them. Anyone have? I know we have a couple of questions from Josh. Why don't we start there?
Sure. So on behalf of Josh Karp, a few questions, if he could be here. What is the status of the West Main bike improvements? I think we've heard about a two-way bikeway on the south side or one-way parking protected lanes on both sides. Do we have a preferred design lately? What and when are the next steps on this?
So the next steps on that project are to bring on a designer to actually design those two alternatives. That has been in our work plan for the year since the beginning. We're just working through our current work, which is Tommy working through our first batch of sidewalk designs. We're tying the ends on putting together the cost estimates for those so we can hand them off to Public Works. Once we're done with that, the next thing is going out and getting a consultant to help Tommy with the design on West Main. What we will be looking at is two different alternatives at a minimum. There may be some design questions within each of those alternatives, but we would be looking at the protected cycle lanes on the outside on both sides and an option that is a cycle track or a bikeway along one side of the road. I would think south makes more sense, but that's just my off the cuff initial thoughts. I'd like to bring in a consultant to make sure that we design out properly. So that's the next step. We're looking to do that, probably starting in January, looking for that consultant, whether that's someone we pull from our engineering on-call contract, or if that's somebody we need to go out and put a bid to find the right team to do that for us.
Okay, second question.
Kind of ask a quick follow-up.
Yep.
Do either of those concepts, use the citizen created design?
Yeah,
or
the one that's on that
recycle?
outside lane, it would be based on
Okay.
what Andy Workman came up with a couple years ago as his suggested
Okay.
design. That it's a pretty solid design. It's one that he worked with our traffic engineer to sort of refine a little bit. But we need to take that to the next step, and then we'd also need to look at, is there an alternative to this that we might want to try that could actually be a better bicycle facility, but may have to move some things around a little bit more dramatically than just, shifting everything to the outside. So I want to look at both of those options, but Andy's design is definitely one that's in the mix.
So I'm really just waiting on cost estimates from the current sidewalk contractor to put that project to bed, and then we can move forward with West Main.
Yeah, and we're
Which has
like,
been going a little slower than we would like, but we're getting there.
and we're right at that, at that finishing point, so we'll be switching off soon after the holidays, I think.
Second question from Josh Carp, about the Bayo update. How much of a problem is scooter parking, and I assume he means scooter and bike parking lately? Has it gotten any better now that my CEVL reports go right to Bayo? It would be great to see some data before any policy changes.
We agree that we would like to see some more data on what's going on with the violations, and that's been kind of a tricky thing. It's like, how do you decide whether this new enforcement mechanism that BO is doing is making an actual change, if it's effective, and making that change to parking? The biggest change that I've seen in the past few months with BO is that they've hired on a new position. They've changed their staffing plan. They now, during the daytime, especially during weekdays, have a floater position. And that's not somebody who's driving around in a truck. That's not somebody who's sitting back at the shop looking at a map. That's someone just riding around on a scooter and looking for the bad spots. Tommy and I have been doing that in the mornings sometimes, and there's still plenty of parking problems out there. They have made.
Guinevere has sent a couple reports lately.
Yeah.
Hello.
There's also some problem spots that we've been talking through with VO, like a lot of the entrance corridors, you'll see a bunch of scooters parked. They may not be parked illegally, they may be parked exactly where we want them to, but there's sort of an aesthetic of, hey, welcome to Charlottesville, here's a pile of scooters that we want to work through. And make it not sort of a gross entry to the city. We've also noticed some places at the edges where like the zone kind of has some dead spots. You may have seen one on John Warner Parkway. There's some spots where you'll be going down the parkway and all of a sudden will be 3 scooters just not anywhere close to the trail, not anywhere close to any destinations. Just looks like somebody got raptured on the side of the road.
Seems incredibly dangerous.
There's some dead spots on our maps that we need to get VO to fix in there, so. That's some of the parking issue, is making sure that their mapping technology is working the way we need it to, because if we're gonna move to a hub-based system, which is what we think is gonna be a little easier to control where people are parking. They need to make sure that they can tell people where those hubs are using their GPS as sensitive as they possibly can.
When you're talking about mapping issues and scooters parked at the edge of the city, is that because they stop working in the dead spots, they stop working at the edges?
Yes,
So people get there and they just stop and carry on.
well, and they sort of slow down once you get past that boundary too, and there's a certain point where people, you can tell people just sort of gave up because the scooter slowed down enough that it was faster for them to walk.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that happening. We've been able to set up in some of those hotspots, some required parking hubs. So we were seeing a lot of random parking down near Azalea Park. And now if you get down there and you try to hop off the scooter, it's going to tell you to go to Azalea Park to that required parking. There are a few spots like that where they're also monitoring to see, all right, do we have a buildup happening here? We were having these buildups of parking at the edge of town at Azalea Park where we were telling people forced parking in this spot. And we would have a dozen scooters there. Well, a dozen people aren't gonna show up and start riding those scooters. That's like somebody taking the scooter home day after day. So now they're monitoring those spots and saying like, okay, if we hit a threshold of this many scooters, somebody needs to go out there and move these scooters.
Yeah.
So they're starting to monitor some things a little more smartly, and we're trying to encourage them to continue doing that, but it's more of a making sure that they are providing us with the data that we can use to make decisions, and also that they're staffing appropriately so that they can move the scooters the way they need to.
And so
The other point was about my Seville. We have noticed that that is more effective now. That's actually the fastest way to address the scooter parking issue now, because it goes straight to our local guys. Doesn't go through VO corporate, doesn't go through me and Tommy, it just goes straight to those
Well, it
guys.
does go through me.
Well, you get a copy.
Well,
when you're
mine,
not the
so
one
how it
holding
works
up.
is it comes directly to me. And then I have a rule in my email that gets forwarded to them.
Right,
So I see, and then they reply back when they have cleared the
Cleared,
ticket.
yep.
So I have a timestamp of when it was reported and when it was cleared.
but it's not, nobody is holding up anything to get it to those guys, so that they know.
Correct.
that
I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be working
Yeah,
for them to get that information,
awesome.
which was, happening. But just to succinctly like say, yes, it's still a problem.
Yeah.
yes,
Very much a problem.
And the extension of the current permit is really, it's only 6 months because you want to buy yourselves enough time to create a better policy.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is very similar to what we did a year and a half ago when we rewrote the policy the first time. That was sort of version 1.0, and this is version 2.0. Like, we've learned some things since we made the last update, so.
And a few months ago, I sent a note to the email list that VO or VO, whatever you say,
It's the hardy, it's VO.
VO is doing an AI approach to parking where it would send those pictures that you have to submit when you park through AI to determine if the parking is done correctly before ending your session. And that they were rolling that out in select markets. Are we
That
one
is-
of those select
We will be
markets?
one of those markets, yes. I think they said January is.
No, they actually were hoping by next week.
Oh,
right.
But,
Yes, that's right.
it's, you know, everything with VO is tempered excitement, so from my standpoint, so, because they said next week, hopefully soon.
Yeah,
And I also will say that, it looks exciting that there's a new technology or method to like address a problem. So hopefully that it helps, but there's other mechanisms that could be happening to also, help the situation.
yeah, they're also talking about incorporating, if we are doing hub parking, incorporating pictures of those hubs,
Mm.
because they're virtual hubs, we're not necessarily painting them on the ground like the big orange ones that we have. So they were talking about building into the app, like a picture of that, so that married with this AI direction thing, you get a pretty good sense of where you're supposed to be putting these things.
Yeah.
Just from the AI, which I feel weird calling it AI, it's a location assistant. It tells you where to park a scooter, and AI makes it sound like a robot's helping you, so it's kind of weird. But they found that it's cut down on their parking problems by like 80% in the European markets. So if we get that kind of change here, that's pretty huge, but I also am a little skeptical of that big of a number. It seems like a wildly radical change from what they've been doing as far as performance so far. So we're waiting and seeing to see how that works out. But
Well,
we
in
know we can make
conjunction
some
with like
changes.
photos, which is something we've been asking for like a year plus now. And like some sort of you know, talking. It won't let you turn off. If you haven't like successfully parked in how they want you to park.
Right.
So that your ride continues and you continue to get charged.
We have found that on UVA grounds, they have forced parking, and somehow they're still having kids that are misparking the scooters despite the fact that it doesn't turn off if you don't park it in the right place. So that's gonna still be around. There's still gonna be chaos of kids just being like, I don't know how to this thing turns off and walking away from it. There's also gonna be the chaos of delivery drivers pulling up and moving the scooters so that they can park in the spot where the scooters were. There's also gonna be just random kids throwing scooters, like. There's gonna be some sort of chaos built into the system. We need to make sure that they are. Not just monitoring their users, but they're also staffing their program enough to control what's going on with their system, so. Looking forward to making progress on scooters. We're not there yet.
We have a couple of new folks who just walked
Yeah.
in, but we should do 2 quick intros. Thank you.
I'm Peter Krebs, longtime DPAC person, Beaumont resident, and I work for the Piedmont Environment.
Hi, I'm new to Charlottesville, also about newish, September. Seeing a few familiar faces already. Oh, thanks, Steve.
So, you know, cameras right on that shelf.
Okay. We have a question from Ethan online. Does anyone know?
I can, yeah, so the question is, there was a Pedestrian bike race, not last year, but the year before and the year before that. To my knowledge, there has not been a permit. They have not applied for a permit, for that event, which I think they need to put it like 6 months prior. So they have, if they're gonna do it around the same time, it would be about now would be the deadline.
And Tommy, just to clarify who they.
So I guess it would be coming from the Charlottesville Racing Club. They're the ones who had put it on previously. So as of right now, no, there is not, to my knowledge. But last year there actually was, I should take that back, there actually was a bike race done through the UVA Racing Club. And I can't remember, there was problems on where they got permission to do that race. Cause they couldn't do it at the stadium, so they were looking at the Fashion Square Mall, and I'm not sure, I don't think it ever happens. But there was a lot going on with that event.
Thank you. Any more questions for staff?
I have questions about the status of some of the quick build projects that could also just pause for the quick build conversation.
Whatever you want, I can give updates on
Okay.
stuff, whatever.
Well, I was mostly curious about, the status of the projects identified at Cherry and Fifth.
Mhm.
I'm seeing under discussion, and then I think in the staff update, it was like, thought there was mention of it, maybe not. But that like some portion of them, I was just curious, like what might be
So-
doable there.
So we had a meeting with the traffic engineer last week. We went through the 10 that you sent out of the bigger group, including Cherry and Fifth. I think we came to, there was a lot of things there that were going to be difficult for the traffic engineer to approve. Define the lane was like a tangible thing that we walked away with that will go into the work order once I get done writing everything up that how they want it to be put in that system. So that will be a thing that comes that you asked for specifically for that. The thing that I think you were asking, and maybe this is how you were asking it, that I did not talk to the traffic engineer, but I need to go back down there and confirm. I think those pedestrian flashing lights are set up weird. There's 3 of them. There's 5 of them. There's 2 right there at the park. There's a middle one, and then there's 2 more at 7.5 Street.
Is there one at the park though? Cause that's what, at Fifth Street, cause that's what people were like, why is there not a flashing?
Not
light
at
on
Fifth Street.
Yeah.
It's a mid-west.
Still at the top though. It's right off.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it walks you into the basketball court side, not the
Gotcha.
driveway side.
Okay, cause that was one of their main concerns was like, it needs to be on the street.
So I will say, let me,
Choose
are
your words
you
carefully.
ready for me to, so we started talking about that area, and I think that area, one of the reasons why we kind of not punted, but we kind of I think that that corridor is gonna get addressed in that more urgent,
Yeah, good.
you know what I'm saying? So I think that like we can kind of revisit that corridor. In this this newer project, most likely.
Yes, going on my
That's fair.
list.
That's why I wasn't interested in like belaboring,
Gotcha.
these projects, here.
Yeah, like, we're gonna have a big discussion about things like where do rapid flashing beacons go
Right,
and when
that's
we're
important.
talking about intersections, and that's a great place for us to reinforce.
Great.
So real quickly though, before I forget, Guinevere, if you press the 7.5 Street, pedestrian signal, which I do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the morning. Right at 6:35, when like all the hospital workers are going to work. It works great, and it also turns on that random one that's mid-block. That's not, it's connected to the system, but it only, I think it only is working for the people going. What's that, eastbound? So I'm not sure how that's helpful.
Like,
No,
there's
it's
not
for the
one on the
people
west.
Yeah, it should be facing the other direction.
Okay.
If you're pressing it, right, it should actually be both.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I need to go back out there and confirm that,
Yeah,
but yeah.
sorry for, but
So he's talking about
Peter owns this
when you
one.
push the button way up here, a block away, it's making that beacon in front of the Salvation Army flash?
Yeah,
That's bizarre.
Only for the people who have passed the crosswalk,
Only for the people driving eastbound,
away from.
like away from the hospital.
Who've already passed the crosswalk.
which is great, yeah.
Yeah.
now
But
if,
in the morning.
now if it's also
when
working
it's out there
at the mid-block crossing, that is helpful.
Is the
But-
mid-block crossing westbound? Or is hospital bound in the morning?
No one going hospital bound in the morning will see that.
Okay.
They will only see the two.
What he's saying is this. one.
It's-
Yeah.
Yeah, and they see them. There's 5 total, so they see the 2 working in conjunction with each other and the 2 on either end, but there's one right in the middle that's only facing drivers going eastbound. So we gotta confirm which intersection, which crosswalk is actually turning that one off, is my point.
So it sounds like there's progress gonna be made, you need to look
Yeah.
at it and things will happen.
Yeah.
That's good. Might I propose switching the order of the next 2 agenda items, so we're not bouncing around, we're
Yeah.
already talking about quick bills. You still have questions, you know?
I just had one question.
Okay.
Yes, Mike, yeah, thank you. The e-bike voucher program, I saw that, there was, I think it was mentioned in the last meeting's agenda that there was some consultation with DC about their program.
Mhm.
Is the Charlottesville program gonna also prioritize residents that are receiving like other forms of government assistance, like SNAP and things like that? Cause I saw on DC's website that that's one of the things they were doing.
Yeah, we're talking with DC about a slightly different program. So we're looking at several different e-bike programs right now. We're looking at this voucher program, which is sort of in the focus of our work so far. Definitely the focus of Tommy's work on this so far. That will not be aimed directly at low-income residents. That's sort of a lottery for anybody who's a city resident. We realized that as we were talking through sort of the conditions for low-income residents, we weren't exactly sure who this technology was best targeted towards. We need people who can afford to maintain and charge and use these vehicles and not just give them a big fancy expensive toy. So we were like, me and Tommy probably aren't the best people to figure out how to equitably divide this up. So we are doing a second program that will be looking to partner with social services, human services, OCS, those sort of social service aimed departments, and get them and their nonprofit partners to help us define who are the people who could most benefit from this and how can we put an e-bike just in their hand without going through the rigmarole of a voucher or a subsidy or checking your SNAP background or whatever. We don't want to be the ones that are going through and determining people's need status. We're good at transportation stuff, but we're not good at social services. We've got other experts for that. So we're gonna lean on them for that sort of equity focused e-bike program. Those are sort of the two big programs that we're gonna have going on, and then we're also working with HR just to look at how do we improve the e-bike culture within our own city, including making sure that employees have access to it both in their personal lives as a benefit and a commuting opportunity to come to work. And then once they get to work, having e-bikes that they have access to make sure they can get into the community and get out to people. We've got 2 of those in our department. Public Works has one. Tommy and I are trying to spread the gospel beyond us, and CPD also has a few. To get other departments like Parks, Office of Sustainability, when they go out and do sort of their business of the city, do it on an e-bike if you can. So we're moving on a bunch of different fronts with the e-bike program, and I think the first one that we're gonna see bear fruit is gonna be our voucher program, which we're gonna have a lot more information about in the next month or so.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great way to do it. So good to hear. Cool.
Yeah, DC is the one we're kind of looking to for that social services aimed one. They are doing something similar, and we're working with Office of Sustainability. They're sort of taking the lead on that. So
Great.
So, I talked to the folks at DC. What I like about DC is that, well, our concerns, to be piggybacking on what Ben said, is that we're a smaller operation. And so a lot of this is just gonna be me, like organizing it, managing it, distributing all the vouchers, working with all the bike shops. Like it's
everybody
a
who wants
big,
e-bike voucher
it's gonna be
is
a
gonna
big program. And adding on that other component would be pretty tricky.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is offer enough money to hopefully like target communities and make it worth their while. And not just worth their while, but they're feasibly able to actually buy an e-bike. But what DT does is they've eliminated, it's all low income now. So it's not just that, like, you know, they don't have stages or levels depending on your status. It's only open to low income.
Yeah, that's what I saw, is that you have to be receiving like SNAP or something else to qualify for their voucher program, which is part of why I just wanted to ask how it was being implemented here.
So our biggest thing with this whole thing is this is a pilot, and we're gonna tweak things as we go, as we see fit. And there might be opportunity, for example, to either next year open it up like DC, or since we're rolling this out like for quarters, like maybe 1 quarter is low income and 1 isn't, or however we want to go about that. But we're trying to first see what we have first before adding more complexity to the program.
Totally. Makes sense.
Yeah, we're also trying to use this as a vehicle to get more people signed up and engaged with our general bike activities. And if we're narrowly focused on just low income, fresh out of the gate, we're only reaching that potential segment. By putting it out to the larger community as our pilot program, we're going to be able to pull a lot more people in. So I think that's part of the aim, is making sure that the whole branding behind biking in this town is kind of open to everybody, especially on our initial venture on this. So
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
I think my comment for the staff was more of a comment than a question that might be out of order, because it's not really something that's on the staff report, but something that's not. And so I guess the request would be for the big projects that are changing in scope, where this group spent years and years coming up with ideas and going through a design process. Tell us what's happened. Barracks Emmett Streetscape, we talked for years and years about having this shared use path up the hill. I said that's a horrible idea because there's not enough room. You're gonna have to put in retaining walls. Lo and behold, they got the project funded. Now they've said, oh, there's not enough room. We're gonna have to put in retaining walls. It's just gonna be a sidewalk. Well, there's already a sidewalk there, so it's just like a little bit more of a sidewalk. What the heck? What's the point of this project anymore? The whole bike ped support for it was for the bike improvement up the hill. What's the plan?
So there will be public engagement involved with that project specifically.
I think EPAC needs to be involved.
I think you
before
should.
Public engagement. We need to.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Peter.
Well,
Tame's the other one.
Yeah, Fontaine.
Are you, okay,
But I guess I'm just saying a bullet point in there that says, here's here's what you were sold and here's what you're getting now, because like, we can't do it. We can't do
Just
what
like
like.
you're asking for a bullet point in a staff report, like at the next meeting.
I think you kind of got that bullet point at city council, which we
But
don't
so
know
we
much
don't
beyond
have a
that.
city. That's why I'm just,
Okay.
it's good to include it.
Oh, I share your frustration and disappointment, even though I haven't been working on that project for years, so.
And we can also celebrate the projects that are still
Yeah.
relatively close to what they were scoped as.
I mean, the city council report was like kind of informative, but me being like even a super user, I had to kind of listen to it slow. It's like, you know, money's from, we'll say, from the two canceled projects. We're getting specifically rotated into these other projects. Like this group, I think would be extraordinarily interested in like that kind of nuance. Yeah, like, okay, so, you know, two projects gone, these two projects still not existing anymore. And in a different way. It is like, of course, dissatisfying to someone like Peter, how could it not be? But, and I'm not saying it would mitigate that concern, but I think it is of interest to know that it's not simply that certain scaled down projects exist and certain projects no longer exist, but the money's actually stayed local, right? And got shifted into these other projects.
Yeah, that's kind of the miracle of all of this,
Yeah.
is that VDOT was like, we'll let you keep the money because we know you need it for these other projects and we don't want you to cancel everything.
Yeah.
Just the stuff you haven't gotten started yet. So that was kind of the deal, is the stuff you haven't gotten started yet, we don't trust that you guys are gonna get your act together to actually start this, because you're still working on the other stuff. And now you don't have enough money to finish the other stuff, so.
My point being that that's the type of data that's easily more readily absorbed in written form than in oral form, because it's like, wait, what did he just say? What did he just say? What did he just say? What did he just say?
And here's the wording
Like
of
when
the
it's right
written
on
form
paper.
for this particular project right now on the city website. It says, shared use path extending up the hill from the intersection will install a 6-foot wide sidewalk with variable width buffer to maintain the existing hillside without the need for retaining walls. So which is it?
It's the 6-foot
Yeah,
sidewalk.
so you're getting.
So am I understanding?
I
that those-
also know, I'm not in charge of this project.
Colin is getting an email.
Colin is the project manager. That's your question.
Am I understanding that there was a report of city council recently, which
Yeah,
there were updates on the project?
Yeah,
yeah, but somebody could just,
Would it be possible to just like give us a,
Get the meeting notes or something?
yeah, just let us know when that, not necessarily before would be great, but after if something important happens, like.
I will 100% try to do that. And I don't mean to say that in jest, I'm just saying like between adding things to like Facebook and like seeing things on, like I am trying to like keep this group
Yeah, yeah.
updated on everything. And that's one that for sure this group should be aware of. It just, I guess, kind of fell through the cracks a little bit.
But that was like $30 million we were talking about,
Right.
right? That wasn't just like, oh, this sidewalk got remeasured from 8 feet to 6 feet, but $30 million of projects just got like kind of explained in a like 10-minute city council discussion, and it was, yeah,
Yeah.
intense.
could someone give just like a real quick, like 30-second recap of what that was for those of us who are completely clueless about what's being
yeah,
discussed?
I can give
I'll let
a
them-
quick recap.
Yeah.
So we were very close to handing Fontaine to VDOT so that they could manage it. Because they're about to do a project in the county, just across the line at the interchange of Fontaine. They want to bundle those two together. And so we worked through handing off that project, and I said, wait, before you hand that off, we're gonna do a cost estimate update and see and make sure that we have all the money for this project. And the cost estimate doubled the price of the project, and they said, yeah, you gotta scale this down, we gotta cut it down before you hand it over. Also, you guys might wanna look at your cost estimates for all of your other projects. So we did that. Turns out all of our cost estimates are blown out of the water. And so we need to come up with the money from somewhere. And VDOT said, We will let you cancel the projects that you haven't actually started any work on, which are Emmett Phase 2 and Fifth and Ridge, the intersection of Fifth and Ridge. We'll let you cancel those, and we'll let you take that money from those 2 projects and plug it into these other projects that now are blown out of the water, and that will cover your budget for these projects so they can continue forward. So we've sort of trimmed down the Fontaine project.
So the report was telling that, correct, to city council?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
James, the W director.
Thank you.
But the nuance where it was like pause for wine, pause for wine, pause for wine was like, okay, Fontaine is receiving money, you know, Fifth and Ridge going away, giving money, okay, you know, like draw the arrow like this. Okay, now I understand. Yeah.
I think, another component of like not registering to like inform this group is that Ben and I have like been in meetings, or this has kind of been in the air for a long time, and we've been kind of talking, but it really wasn't confirmed. And so until recently, so that we didn't know what to say,
It was-
because there wasn't anything confirmed
Yeah, it
until
was-
relatively recently.
Basically, the beginning of October, where VDOT came to us and said, hey, you have this choice. And we said, oh, cool, we're gonna take it to council. We're gonna go out to the public and make sure they're, and they said, no, you have until next week to say whether you're doing this. It may have been, and that put some balls in motion where we needed to make some decisions pretty quickly on whether we were gonna save these projects or not. And along the way, council said, hey, you probably need to come to council and tell everybody what you're doing. And that's what Monday means. So there probably won't be a whole lot of public outreach on the strategy as a whole, but there is going to still be public outreach on the design changes that happened with Fontaine and with Erickson. Before we finish our designs. Right now, we're at 60%.
Sorry, is it your estimation that cancellation of those projects were imminent? And the only real question was whether the money could be captured locally for other projects.
I think part of it was also which ones would actually, to figure out where the money was coming from, either the central office or the state, like there was trying to figure out where we could, which ones could be kind of.
Point being, there could have been a scenario where Emmett Phase 2 gets canceled and the money does not stay
Right.
local.
Yes, and that was
Was
part
that
of,
scenario on the table and evaded, or?
that was evaded, and that was part of the discussion of which project. You know, that's why Barracks and Emmett stayed.
Right.
Even though we haven't started any real work on that. We've done some right of way discussions with property owners, but we hadn't followed through on any of that yet. But the reason that one stayed is that came from a specific statewide fund. Whereas all of our other projects were from a district fund. So our district administrator was like, well, you're the biggest city in the district, so if it goes back to the district, it's probably coming back to you. So we don't want to go through that step. We'll just keep it with you guys if you stick with district funded projects. And you know, figure out what to do with your state funded ones. So that did have some implications on the discussion. And they also were like, you know, you might want to go along with this because you're not going to get this opportunity more than
Right.
once. And we're not putting this opportunity out to everybody in the state. You're getting some special treatment here because we know that you need help pretty badly. So we're very appreciative of VDOT right now, and hoping to move these projects forward.
I am wondering though, if there could almost be in the staff updates, just like some standing sections, like update on Fifth Street Road diet, update on West Main, even if there's no update.
Oh, we
but
were
just-
talking about this earlier. So we meet earlier in the week as staff to start thinking through what's in this staff report, and this is what our third time doing
Yeah.
this. And we were thinking we might want to change the structure of it ourselves because there's a little bit of a disconnect, whereas you're getting reporting from 3 or 4 of us and 3 in different sections, and like, yeah, there's definitely some cleanup that we want to do, and maybe not carry over the notes from the previous month every time. So just sort of give you a quick summary of these are the changes that happened this month.
Cool, but yeah, a place to just keep tabs on the big exciting.
Do you
things that
think,
we're all excited about.
do you think one of you guys could like send us like the specific things, like the projects, or, I mean,
We can figure that out.
okay, well, I just wanna make sure that we don't miss something that they were interested in knowing
Well, I
about.
feel like, you know, it's like every meeting, I feel like someone asks Kyle about the speed cameras in school zones, you know, like the things that kind of are just ongoing there. They're not done yet, so we can't take, but hopefully there's progress being made, and so it's just nice to know.
Stuff.
That's
There is
pretty
progress being made on that one. They are working with CPD right now.
great.
Yeah.
I wasn't even gonna ask.
Procurement is done.
Yeah.
So we actually have the cameras. It's just a matter of testing them, calibrating them, making sure we're not like picking the wrong people too often.
Well, it's like almost $250,000 has been brought in from the ones on Maya Road.
I'm hoping that that sort of peters off because that seems like an absurd amount of speeding.
And I'm like,
happening
wait,
from
man, we
this.
could really build some sidewalks with that or something.
Yeah, you also have to take into account the speeds and the roads are a little bit
Yeah, yeah,
bigger
yeah,
than the ones that
totally.
we have here. But yeah, we've already we've seen that and have realized, hey, there's probably some other places we need to look after we get these first things around.
Yeah. There you
I
go,
mean,
$30 million.
one that came to mind that we don't typically think about as city staff is Roseville Drive.
Totally.
There's a school zone right there, but it's not city schools.
Yeah, and I don't know, I wasn't sure how that works.
It's our street, so.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I can imagine the county would be very happy to have that.
I think the neighborhood. would probably
And that
too,
too.
but we want to make sure these first three work. These were sort of our hot spots. And then after that, we can start branching.
That was all very good.
Ben, I've got one quick question just to piggyback on the school camera thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
What is the plan for assuming there's revenue generated by the fines that eventually come from those cameras? Where is that earmarked for? That just go into like
Your mark
city's general fund or?
just go, it's the same place that a speeding ticket goes today. It eventually ends up in the general fund.
Yep.
But it's not earmarked for anything specific. It's just traffic enforcement tickets.
If I could make a pitch that has been successful in some other places to have it stay within, so like camera number 3 is on, I'm making it up, but on, Rose Hill Drive, camera number 3 generates, $500,000 worth of revenue over the course of a year. There are some municipalities that then like split that or dedicate it completely to improvements within that neighborhood, like pedestrian improvements or traffic calming improvements or things like that, so that it's like addressing the safety of that corridor that we now like have data to say is a problem. So I don't know how that happens within all of the different channels in City Hall, but I like that model a lot to keep it, specifically close to those school neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's something we can look into. I think right now the focus is just making sure the ticket goes from the company to CPD to the person in the correct order and that all the money is going to those, between those three entities correctly. And maybe once we are assured that that is working the way it's supposed to and we start seeing those revenues coming in, that might be a good time to bring up that conversation so that we can say, hey, now we know how much money this specific camera is bringing in. Seems like there is this size problem over in that neighborhood. That might be the place to push. I think in the meantime, I can see if this is even an option for us. We may run into some weird Virginia rule.
Yeah, it might be a illegal idea, but there's also at least some other places that also have like a lottery where it's split between the fines come in, some of it goes to projects and some of it goes to like paying good drivers to be good drivers. So I don't think we need to go that far, but there's options there rather than just like dump it in the city's general fund, which I think it gets lost there. And I think it'll be really nice for this committee and you all as staff to be able to point to, the cameras that people are going to complain about, definitely, and say, yeah, but the kids walking to this school are now safer because of the project that was funded by the negligent drivers. I just feel like that's a really good story to tell.
I mean, I don't have a problem using the data to tell the story that I need more money from the general fund, so at the very least, I'm gonna be putting the pressure to use that money. But I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get it specifically earmarked for this purpose. Also, Virginia has like some of the weirdest laws about traffic cameras and when you can use them and how you can use them and how you can use the money for them, so we may be getting into a whole world of esoterica that I don't wanna wrap my mind around. But we'll poke the bear, see how this is functioning and see if this is a possibility, but one way or the other, I'm gonna use that data to make the case that we need to be spending more money on making bikes and pedestrians safer, specifically in school zones.
Next up, we have a discussion of the first two easy routes. Let's back up a bit. This came from the mobility summit in late winter this year as an idea to map and signpost kind of safer, easier, low stress routes through the city to try to show people who are new to the city where they can go, and to show people who don't always bike that maybe there are safe ways to bike. We've done a lot of community engagement to get suggestions for easier routes. And at the moment, we just have a kind of spaghetti map. Half the streets in the city are marked. We've tried to do some quality control and pick out some routes that will eventually become two of the routes that form part of this project. We sent them out a month or two ago, asked people to cycle them if they had time, give feedback in the spreadsheet. I know we've got some feedback already. I just wanted to make space in this meeting for people to give more feedback if you've seen them, and perhaps talk a little bit about next steps for the project. Do you think we're ready to do that, Peter?
So I think,
I'll let you kind of lead this section.
yeah, so I'm gonna read the working definition of what this project is in a second, but I think we might wanna put like a couple more routes down on the map and see how they all interact with each other. Sooner rather than later, but sooner, before we commit to like the two that are up there, I should say.
So can we describe describe the easy routes and then describe the two that we have up there?
Yeah. So I'm gonna read a little bit what you wrote. All right, so the combined Charlottesville and Albemarle urban area is only 8 miles across, manageable for many cyclists, especially as e-bikes become increasingly popular. However, many of the main thoroughfares seem forbidding to all but the boldest of cyclists due to the very real danger of being struck by a vehicle. There actually are some ways to get across town using combinations of quiet back streets, greenways, or paths, and a sidewalk or stairs here and there. I added that little part, and we can talk about that if we want. But they're often subtle, counterintuitive, or hidden. Many are not shown as options using popular map apps. These routes will show riders how to get around their city in unique ways, and eventually over time, the routes might change due to improved infrastructure. So I think I may have tweaked that last sentence or added that last sentence as well. What I'm finding is that I think people are going to explore the routes that we suggest, and they're assuming that they are supposed to be direct. I think part of this project from the beginning was that they might not be direct. This is to find ways to get around a very manageable city in terms of its size by finding, again, low stress routes. I think our initial conversation was looking at the low stress route map in the bike and pedestrian master plan and starting there to create these routes. And again, these routes will be something on a map. We got the ride with GPS like professional count now, where you can add all the routes together on one map and see them together, not just like click on one. But hopefully down the line, we're also gonna add like signage infrastructure along the routes as well. So you're on the red line, if you will.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, so, I mean, the routes are not like obviously super direct, but I think they could be decently direct. I mean, we're suppose you wanted to drive from here to UVA, for example, you go down West Main. The easy route might be a block or two to the north or south of that. It still is a pretty direct way, and we're still linking, you know, in point A to point B. So yeah, I think the idea is still solid. Continuing with Tommy's update, so we've been collecting input. There are two of them that we have a couple of sets of input on. We did a group bike ride on a easy route up to the 29 North corridor. I would say since the last meeting, right? It was just a couple weeks ago.
Like 2 weeks ago.
And I was pretty shocked at like how quiet and easy it is. I mean, easy in the sense of like, not stressful. There are hills around this in Charlottesville.
Wasn't it on a Sunday morning?
It was on a Sunday morning, sure.
Just to
Yeah,
make that.
it would be interesting to try it on during rush hour. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's
So,
good.
I thought about that, and I think that for that particular route, it would change, but, where the high stress is, we were on a greenway.
Nice.
So, the places that would be problematic would be Preston
Mhm.
and McIntyre intersection. And the proposed route takes you creatively across Preston downstairs, which is why, because you cut, so you're starting at the train station, cutting under the bridge into West Haven, make a right on 8th Street, drop you over to Albemarle behind Random Row and all that, then down the stairs. And then you're finding your way on Preston for a block, and then you make a left on a crosswalk behind the Albemarle County office, and then you hop on the Greenway from there essentially.
And it's gonna be, I mean, just being real, this is not happening if we can't go on a Preston-like street for a block or two. It is simply
Right.
not happening, and we should let it go if that is our standard. But I think we can notate that on the map. That would be one of the interesting, like, things to say, like, so the route that we rode went up to 29, but not on 29, not across 29. This route has an extension that would go on Berkmar that would be on a VDOT street using a cross traffic light. It's a road that's warranted for cyclists, for bikes, but it doesn't have a bike lane. It doesn't have anything protected. So we notate that, like, this stretch is a busy, trafficy road. And this thing you're going to is a shared use path. Like, I think we can maybe even colors or like advise people about what they're getting into on that.
Google Maps has a, like, if it's all solid green, you know, it's like a dedicated
Right,
website.
yeah.
If
Yeah,
it's-
I think when we were doing the ride, the places where I felt the most uncomfortable were some of the like 25-mile-an-hour roads through a single-family residential neighborhood
Yeah, I'm
where
actually.
there's no bike lanes.
Right,
And I think that would be important to note, like,
yeah,
you might be going up some hills on some places where there aren't any bike lanes and there are people doing 30 miles an hour on that.
yeah.
And there's a double yellow line.
And there's double.
Right.
So there,
I'm more comfortable when it is traffic than when there's not traffic usually.
So I think that's why one of the reasons why I'm bringing up the definition.
Out of nowhere.
Because, we've talked about this. And I think that everyone's a different, we're all different bikers. We're all different, we are much more confident in different settings. We like it in different ways, all the above, right? So I don't think we're going to find a way to like find one easy route that's like the best for everybody, in my opinion. And I pictured this as something that can change over time. I think we're trying to find routes that make sense for this project now. And from my standpoint, it's been very educational to see where there are some like, man, if there was just this one little project that we could fix, it would drastically improve. It's identified needed projects, specifically once you get to 29, and if there was a way to cross safely to over to Berkmar, for example.
I wanted to ask about the input, because I haven't filled out the spreadsheet, and I was going to, and then I stopped because I was like, well, I'm just gonna be complaining about all the places that I don't like, and that's kind of out of the scope of what you guys can do. But it sounds like you're saying that maybe that's not actually out of the scope. So what kind of
No, I would prefer to get that type of comments in some other forum.
So what are you looking for?
So
I'm-
like, here's what you ought to do, like, so you see what we're doing with the Northtown Trail route. If you have a better idea of how to do it, tell us that.
What other quiet streets?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is that we're trying to capture like wisdom about like my, like, you know, stuff I've written on my hand about how to get it around, like, so, you know, like Tommy identified that stairs is a way to identify a chunk of Preston, like that's a good feedback. So that kind of thing, or, you know, someone, yeah, or, a comment that I made on the east-west route is I suggested that Dardental Park be the eastern terminus, not Riverview Park. You know, that is a more, for me, a more interesting thing, and then we can collectively, like, as a group, come back to BPAC and say, okay, so we've got these couple of decisions we have to make. Should it go to Dardental, should it go to Riverview, or should it go to both?
Yeah, it could go through to Riverview and then on the trail
Right.
up to Richmond Road and then over the bridge with some sidewalk. Get off the bike.
Yeah.
Then over to Darden on the shared use path.
Right. Put that in the spreadsheet.
I'll put it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's next?
So, yeah.
Well, I think the next is like, maybe not, we don't have to, well, how does everyone feel about the definitions that we've been saying? I heard from Josh, but like, what about the rest of the people in this room? To me, hills aren't so much a something that should stop us from adding it to a route. Hills with speeding cars that people might feel uncomfortable with, I could see, but the main reason why we got this software is that we can tell people what this elevation profile of the route is before heading into it. Google Maps doesn't do that. So yeah, I mean, does everyone kind of see what we're trying to do here with the definition? Do people feel like we need to change this concept? Because I think if everyone feels good, I think the next step is let's add 5. Can't find the tourism big map where they have all of their trails on here, but the next step I think is like add 5 and then start tweaking it. I will also say that one of the things I noticed when I'm creating these routes, people were saying, well, I had to be very specific when creating the route. I can't plug and play it. I have to draw it out so that people can identify, all right, are you in the bike lane right now? Are you in the flow of traffic? Are you in a sidewalk? Like I have to, so I have to be add a little bit more time to the detail of that.
So we have 2 routes that we've done a little still testing on, do you have more routes drawn out?
Well, we have more routes, we have about 5 routes that we can, from the Google map, that we can kind of play around with. I
Do
haven't,
they exist as routes yet, or?
no,
No, so
we need
we
to.
have plenty more data, we just need to decide where we want them to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, so our public input yielded a bunch, not just a bowl of spaghetti, but what it would look like if you dumped spaghetti on a piece of paper. Picked all the spaghetti off and you'd have all the stains of like, wavy lines, that's actually what our, thing, and then, so, yeah, then like, maybe that. Steps. Why don't can you just throw up the North Town route? How many it's in
Yeah,
here?
if you just show us what we're talking about and check that no one on doing this.
I'm not logged into, this is none of my,
Oh,
I'm
it's
not.
okay.
Okay, that's fine, I should have.
So let's not, stay on this to hold the topic up more.
Can I ask one question about the tool? How does it let you do directionality? Like,
Oh.
I've seen some comments about use this street, but like it's a one-way.
It requires directionality, actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It looks like the 2 that are drawn are really directional, even though the intent is that you could go either way.
But we could simply throw a,
Just do it.
out and back on it, if that was a problem. But the northern your northbound trip might want to be different than your southbound trip, to your point also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
you may have a diversion from.
right, yeah.
Yeah, another way to potentially go about that is if I can find,
And we really found that road testing, by the way, where like on Berkmar, there'd be a bike lane, a shared use path on the wrong side of the road, so we'd have to like cut across traffic, and because it was Sunday, it was no problem to do that, just ride right across and you're fine.
so I don't think this is the updated North Town route. I have another profile for that, but, and it actually, because the other one actually shows what we did on our route, which is we did a loop. We didn't actually come back the same way. We came, through this neighborhood
Yeah.
and then picked up Hillsdale.
Correct.
And then took Hillsdale down and picked up the shared use path along 250, which I thought was quite nice. So that might be a way to show directionality to some extent. We find one way is better than the other. But yeah,
As long as the loop isn't so far that it leaves people who aren't starting at the beginning and ending at the end out. Like if people are starting midway,
Right, or ending midway.
like my house, for example.
uh,
I would never take the Hillsdale part unless I was going from my job to downtown, which is not the way I got like stuff.
well, I think to some extent, in my mind, this isn't going to tell you how you want you to go, right? This to me is hopefully going to be a resource for folks who may never be biking right now, and they're hopefully win a lottery and get an e-bike, and they're like, what do I do now? And they see low stress
That's
routes.
fair.
And it's up to them to find their way over to the low
Right.
stress route, just like we make them walk over to a bus stop.
So you're giving them
Doesn't
two,
pick them up.
alternative options in that case.
We're giving alternative options, and we're also saying, like, I have a lot of experience hiking backcountry and doing all this stuff, and I know how to read a map, and I can like see, oh, this goes here and there's a connection here. When I worked in a visitor center, I don't know how many times I help tell people, have people read a map. I think, if you're new to biking, you may be also new to looking how to navigate your city and your community and how to like make connections. This hopefully is gonna show people like, there's people out there making these connections every day that are alternative. Like they may not recognize that just because I need to go here and I live here, then I take what Google Maps tells me to do.
Right, so this map is not an explanation of infrastructure, this map is a concierge, right? That's the difference, and so like the Arlington low stress route map, it just shows you where the bike lanes are, but it doesn't show you how to do anything, and in fact, I just picked it up, and it actually doesn't tell you any like contiguous route except the Arlington Loop Trail. So this has like weirdnesses where you're on a sidewalk on stairs. That's the downside. But the positive side is it's like a normative actual deliverative value. Like here's how you get from here to this other place.
I think it
Yeah.
like inspires people to
Right.
think more creatively about how to like get around through their city.
Right.
And don't, if the road works for you, then cool, keep doing that, but maybe when you get off Route Road to get to the next place you need to go, like,
Yeah, I just needed to look at it in a different way. It's not telling you how to get from A to B. It's just showing you ways to go if you can pick and choose where.
So Tommy, to answer your question about should we start adding other routes, I mean, y'all have put a lot of thought into this, and I think as long as we all recognize it's like an iterative process that's going to be tweaked and adjusted, a lot at the beginning and then less frequently as it gets more established. I would love to see these two overlaid with each other and like any others that have kind of emerged out of the spaghetti map that Peter was talking about, to just start with the framework of a network, and do more of the group rides and get feedback on it and tweak it here and there. I'd say yes, move forward with adding other high priority easy routes to the map.
so I have another update related to this.
So still on the same topic then, what I would suggest we do for a next step is continue using this ride with GPS tool we could put on a few more routes. We could have like Metro Map is our ideal. So something that's as built out as the Metro Map, like 6 routes or something like that, still in this tool. And we're gonna have it in a beta phase for a while. The tool is great in some ways, but the tool doesn't allow us to say like, okay, guys, you're crossing 29 here. You might want to think twice about it, or you're riding a sidewalk. Whereas a map that a designer does can totally have that. But we want to get our routes a little more locked in before we hire a designer to lay out any routes. And by the way, this ride with GPS tool, I think is going to be one of the main ways that people ever experience the thing, because it's the one that they'll have on their phone. That's
And the nice thing about this is, by the way, Ride GPS, this is something Herb brought up from the very beginning, is he wants a printed map. You can just print this as a PDF and take it with you or whatever. So, yeah.
Could I draw that to a close?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Thank you.
Slightly abruptly, but just to move on, give us time for the other thing. That was really helpful. I'm excited to see the other routes, see what we can come up with. Maybe do some more test rides as well. So next is an update from the Quick Build subcommittee. We've had an update ourselves from Ben, and we just kind of wanted to share.
Sure, yeah.
Lead and fill this time, however you.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've had this quick build committee since the spring, I want to say since April, where we were kind of, Ben was tasking us with identifying places where flex posts and paints and those kinds of things could be deployed relatively quickly for like temporary safety improvements that could potentially lead to more permanent fixes, but in the meantime, get some stuff on the ground. We've identified a lot of places. In fact, I don't actually know that we have like a number on how many quick build locations we've identified. Not all of them are meet the exact perfect criteria that Ben and Tommy laid out for us. But I think Tommy has been good about making sure we understand what's been entered into the public works system so that we know that staff has been moving these recommendations along. I don't know that we've seen like a like, we should have a party actually when we see like the first quick build improvement has been done and it's here and we should celebrate. A ribbon cutting, exactly. Or like, for some, like, so we should think about that. So I don't know that we can be like, yay, it's working just yet, but I think it is working. I mean, the stuff is in progress. We know, things don't ever happen as quickly as any of us would like, but they are underway. And it's been a great kind of group effort of trying to surface, like, where are the priority locations? How do we make sure we're, not just like catering to our neighborhoods, which of course are the places that we all know the best. But it's been fun. We're also trying to figure out, like, how do we make sure that we're getting, input from people who are on BPAC, and do we turn this over and make it a part of get public input? So that it's not just those of us who like to nerd out on this stuff. So I think that stuff is kind of still in process. Last month, when we met, Ben asked that we kind of pause on that work and help him identify kind of the city is trying to do like a triage process, essentially, like figuring out, like, what do we do first? What is highest priority across a couple of tracks? One of them is, how do we deploy traffic calming measures that are going to be approved by the fire marshal, right? Knowing that, like, emergency vehicles need to be able to access all of our streets and don't like to be slowed down. So that's kind of our first project, is to identify locations where some traffic calming measures can be piloted on kind of lower trafficked areas where we also know that, like, speed is still a factor. But if not, for example, it's not Cherry Avenue or it's not Elliott. But where we can pilot some of these things so the fire department can feel good about they're not going to damage the trucks, they're not going to, slow them down so much that they can't be timely in their response. So that's kind of our first set of projects. We currently have, for traffic calming locations, we currently have just 5 projects, but we're hoping to just turn out a robust list of possible places, again, kind of lower speeds, not main roads, just places where we can test drive some of this stuff. So that's what the committee is working on. The goal would be to have a list to Ben of at least 10 locations. I'm hoping we get a list that's much greater and that we're just starting to collect these locations. We can let Ben decide the best places, or we can do that together as a committee. Subcommittee, excuse me, Peter, sorry. The other 2 kind of buckets of locations that we've been asked to identify are pedestrian crossings that are at unsignalized intersections or mid-block crossings. So the first one is Cherry Avenue, 5th Street. And then the other bucket is pedestrian crossings at signalized locations. And I think the kind of what I'm really looking for as I think about these are slip lanes. Because they're so dangerous, even if there's a signal. So that is, or there's a signal maybe, but not for a pedestrian.
Could be, yeah.
So, so that's kind of, we've been a little bit like put on triage duty to help the city to be able to identify, like, where are the places we could throw in a rapid flashing beacon. If we're gonna order however many you're gonna order, where should they go? So that's what we've been up to. I think an open question is what happens to the kind of ongoing work of the Quick Build Committee as we, continue to need to identify places for paint and plastic. And Josh Karp sent an email to me and Ben today, just kind of wondering, like, is this real? And I don't want to speak for Josh, and I see he's on, but I don't know if he can speak, but just kind of like wondering, like, is this the best use of this committee's time? Like, should we really be doing this versus just like, we kind of know a lot already? Do we need to be kind of using the wisdom of this group? One thing that I would say is that one thing that I'm really excited to do is to actually go into communities and to have build conversations with people about the places in their neighborhoods that need addressing, where we can kind of bring some ideas about what might work from a quick build perspective, and they can tell us what they need, like where things are too fast, where things feel unsafe. I continue to have a lot of back and forth, but no meeting date yet set with the executive director at FAR, who, you know, works with a lot of public housing communities, because she has told me, like, our residents have thoughts for you. So like, I'm just like waiting to have this meeting.
So what's the waiting?
It's just like scheduling. She's been sick, then it was Thanksgiving anyway. So I would like, I sent her a new round of dates. So hopefully,
Awesome.
Yeah,
And
well-
she's quite responsive with,
Great.
with some of the trail projects that we've
Okay.
been working on. so-
okay. Anyways, yeah, and to be able to go back to folks in Pipeville and say, we heard you, here's what we plan to deploy in your neighborhood. So that is kind of underway. I think there's more we can be doing, but that's essentially the update. Is there anyone from the committee who would like to chime in with anything?
I think Josh mentioned in his email, like, how is city staff taking on this? And we're also coming up with lists. He was sort of pointing to, we know where a lot of these problem locations are, and city staff knows where these problem locations are. So why do we need to keep talking about where are these locations? We're making our own list very similar to the quick build subcommittee. We just want sort of some quality control. We want to open source this question. So it's not just, you know, the 40-year-old white guys who work for the city making this decision. We want to make sure that the community has some way of giving input and advice to city staff so that we're not, you know, having blind spots around some things. We do recognize that this committee is sort of that vehicle for bringing in that public input. We'd love for there to be other vehicles on top of this, but you guys are sort of our front lines on public engagement for the city. And we've also heard from you that you'd like to take on that role and reach out to also all sorts of folks in the community, because you're recognizing sitting around this table that you're not representative of the community as a whole yourselves. So I'm looking forward to y'all taking on that challenge. I think that's a very worthy use of the committee's time. And it's not like a doing double duty of what the staff is already doing. We're literally asking for the advice. We're working on it from our expertise on the other side, but we want to make sure that we're not missing something. So
Cool, thank you for
Yeah.
speaking to that. I would offer two things. Tomorrow evening, James will be at the grand illumination with a map that Tommy has had printed. So folks who are downtown tomorrow night can identify on the map places where they feel are unsafe. We can be asking specifically for these kinds of the criteria I just mentioned, those three categories. We can of course be talking about quick builds. So that's kind of one part of this community engagement strategy. I was also just reminded that there was an article in Seattle Tomorrow a while back about the walk zones for the elementary schools, and how at West Haven to walk to Trailblazer, it's been a challenge to get kids. It's been a challenge to have teachers do walking buses, which I know they've also done at Summit. It's been a challenge to just like get kids to walk, like, period. And City Promise has stepped in and offered, I think, 2 kind of like walking bus chaperones, walking bus drivers, to help get kids to and from that school, which is like, you could almost see it from West Haven, like it is not far, but it's, for some reason, there's a disconnect. There's people are not walking, kids are not walking to school. And I think from my own experience as a Summit parent, former Summit parent, I think that's also true for kids at Kindlewood. So trying to figure out
it does have a
if they do.
Yes.
Okay.
it's very well attended.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure. I've heard different things, but that's good to know.
What is our big success story? We're a little disappointed with how the one over is.
Yeah.
Trailblazer has turned out, but
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it seems like trying to meet with City of Promise or other folks in that neighborhood to figure out like, what is it? I don't know. It could be cultural, it could be many things. That this committee could help with, or maybe could not help with, but it feels like a good community to be reaching out to.
Can I ask a question of clarification about the 3 lists? And I should probably know the answer to this, but are they just related to pedestrian problems and improvements, not bicycle?
All users.
The first one is
All-
like traffic calming
It's
testing
say
ground.
pad in the tabs.
Right.
So I wasn't, cause I've got some that are not problematic for.
Ben asked me this question and I said Guinevere was on the news and she specifically said that we need better bike and pedestrian infrastructure. So I was like, the narrative seems to be bike every time someone talks about pedestrian projects. So I think it's important to kind of.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. I think,
I just don't wanna put something on the list if it's not the right list.
well, I'm just trying to think. So the first one is just traffic calming, so that's kind of neither. The second one is I have as pedestrian crossing locations that are unsignalized or mid-block, so it feels like it's specific to pedestrians. And same thing with the second one, it's just that they're signalized. So,
What are you thinking?
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you have in mind?
So specifically, Park Street and Melbourne. There's no sidewalk on one side. If you're on the side with the sidewalk, you have no problems navigating that intersection. But if you're on a bike, you're not gonna be on the sidewalk, you're gonna be on the street if you're going northbound. And if you need to
Make that left.
make that left,
You're in traffic.
for example, to go to the high school, that's not great. So I would love to see an improvement there, but it's not gonna help pedestrians.
It's not one of these
It's-
three things.
Yeah, and it's also like a rapid flashing beacon is not the answer to that problem either.
Well, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
You're
I
not
mean, the
looking
answer
for
is like a
answers,
predicted
are
bike
you?
lane with
You're just
with a
looking for problems,
with a bike signal.
right?
Which brings me
Mostly, yeah.
to a
Because I don't-
question then, like what happens to these things that we have that are just gonna keep coming, that don't fall into these three buckets?
I think you should hold on to them. We're gonna be coming back to you for round 3 of the quick builds, but before we do that, we and staff need to give you better instructions. I came to you a year ago and said, give me ideas and filter your ideas through this committee, and that was solving that problem for me.
So,
But it created a new problem, which is what happens when your things work? And we have to turn them permanent and like, we don't have a fund for that. So now we have a bunch of stuff that we're putting out on the street or that we have in the work order system that we don't have. What happens next? If it works, do we maintain it? Do we build something permanent there? We also didn't give you much direction on where to look, what kinds of things we're going to be funding over the next couple of years, like. There are some more directions that we need to give you, but I think in the meantime, when you have these ideas, when you have these. Issues like this sort of place where we haven't explicitly said, hey, I'm looking for one of these 3 things and it doesn't fit in one of those buckets, please keep it in your hat. We're gonna come back and ask you for more
And
problems.
you can use our original document, it's getting a little out of hand.
Well, if you
Um,
put bike, if you put bike in addition to ped in the name of that tab, then I will.
But I
would
don't
add
think it's,
bike.
but I don't think it's actually an appropriate,
Not this.
it shouldn't
right.
go in this spreadsheet.
Your original quick build.
The original document, it could go in the original document, but is
Why
there,
does it not go in this one?
because this is to identify places to put like rapid flashing beacons, to deploy traffic calming measures.
Okay, but that's
Within the
not
next-
in,
Although
that's
I
not in
think,
the spreadsheet.
The next line says not seeking recommendations of what to install, just where.
Yeah.
Right, but we also know it's like,
But we don't know.
You have to know what to do to put it in there, but you don't wanna tell it what.
But can I
well,
back?
I just don't think, I mean, Josh it's a prime location for help, but I don't think it's meets the criteria.
But I don't understand why.
No, I think,
So,
I'm
I don't know
gonna
how
disagree with you. I think it
Okay.
does actually fit in, because I'm asking you, show me an intersection where I have a problem. I'm not asking you for the solution necessarily.
Okay.
So he's telling you, I got a problem at this intersection. That sounds
Okay.
like that's where there's a problem that I need to know
Great.
about.
So do these define anything if it's just intersections with problems?
No, we're not defining what the solution is.
No, not the solution, like, does it narrow down the scope at all?
No, not really. I'm kind of leaving up what the scope is to you as your
Okay.
advice.
So Guinevere and I came away from the meeting 2 weeks ago thinking that we've got a much narrower scope, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but
It's narrower in scope than what round 2 and round 1 or round 2 of quick builds was. This is, I'm specifically looking for these 3 types of things. I'm not asking you for a suggestion of what I should build there. I'm just asking for locations where I need our city engineer to focus his efforts on. coming
Okay,
up with
because
units.
what I have in here is where can we put narrower lanes, reflectors, hawks, RFBs,
Yep,
et cetera.
those are the kinds of things that will,
And I don't know, I mean, again, we're not suggesting making recommendations for what to put in, but I don't know that Josh's specific thing is gonna be solved by one of those fixes.
But maybe we don't have to.
But we're just trying to figure out like what, yeah, what is and what isn't, and
Well,
fine if we wanna,
talking signalized intersection.
yeah.
So we're not talking about the rather flat.
Is it?
That's the other town.
Oh, sorry, you're right, you're right.
It is a traffic light.
No, Melbourne Park.
Got it.
And my point is not that whether or not it, I don't care if it is appropriate or not, I just wanna know, like,
I think,
should I put it on the list?
yeah.
Because I'm not gonna know, you know?
Right,
I don't know
well,
what I don't
but I
know.
also, yeah, and I'm also like, is there even a quick build fix for that? Like, I'm not sure, so do we need a third document that is tracking just like problematic intersections where we don't know, that's like the new traffic engineer's job to figure out what the solution is, but we want you
That's
to
what
know
I
that.
thought that this was.
No, this is different, this is like specific, well, that
Well,
was
is
my
that right?
understanding,
No,
but
I'm
maybe I'm
asking,
wrong.
I am asking where are the problem
Okay,
intersections? Yeah,
so I
Okay.
think we thought Josh shouldn't put it in the document, but Ben's telling us that we're
Yeah.
mistaken and he should put it in the document.
that's
But
right.
didn't you also ask him to come up with like a priority or no, or just everything?
I just want your top 10 most.
Yeah,
urgent
so if it's
ones.
top 10, is it gonna make the top 10?
It should still go in the document and then we prioritize.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think.
I mean, put it in, it's like which document,
Yeah.
I want all the
I'm just
bad.
confused about most things, and so I need.
It turns out you
Brought
read
to
it.
me, like.
We're in a brave new world here with
I
all
know.
of this, so
Yeah.
the fact that
The
anyone
fact
is
that, like,
confused is not
People think they're
surprising.
gonna fix things that we're asking them to
So-
fix, like, what?
Yeah, maybe I'll get, yeah, okay.
Okay,
Okay, is there anything else?
There's not
we're
one
at
time.
time.
Well, I was just gonna speak quickly about kind of the previous quick build charge and kind of that huge document that was getting a little bit overwhelming. I talked to Tommy briefly about it, but I sent out to, I think, James and Guinevere and city staff kind of an alternative project management kind of option for it that I'm not wedded to at all. I'm happy to, take any feedback or abandon, but it's nothing that has to happen now. But if and when we get back to those suggestions for quick builds or just a place to capture problematic intersections and stuff, I'd be happy to kind of talk through it with city staff. And then if we want to use that, it's more of a kind of project management, project flow kind of a thing. So some of these things that we're talking about, like, I think this is a problem, but I don't know what to do with it. There's a home for those kinds of things in the Airtable that I've played around with, where there isn't really a home for that in the huge Google Doc table thing. So it's a 2025 problem, but just kind of planting that seed, I guess, mostly for city staff to see if there's an appetite for incorporating that when the time comes.
and thank you, Ethan, for doing it, because I think it's
That's
awesome,
really cool, yeah.
and I think it would solve some of these problems.
One announcement, the next monthly community walk is this Sunday at 2 p.m. during the, what's it called? The
Lewis Mountain,
Lewis Mountain neighborhood, where are we meeting?
Foods of All Nation at the bike rack. Right there up front.
Excellent.
This Sunday.
This Sunday.
You know what I'm doing this weekend.
Any other,
If anyone wants to come to the tea bazaar right after this and hang out, we have a table.
another social activity, sorry? And if anyone wants to help at the grand illumination tomorrow night. To buy little
This is an elf. Would you dress as an elf?
Is there an elf costume in the box? If there is, then yeah.
There isn't yet, but we've got some work to
That'd
do.
be amazing.
So-
An elf with a cycling helmet?
Yes. Oh.
Okay, unless there's anything else, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
All right.
Two.